It's a broad generalization that, for the most part, guys as a whole just can't express their emotions properly. And that makes it a lot harder to actively be vulnerable. And this is something that I myself struggle with constantly, is actively being upfront about, hey, what am I feeling? What am I struggling with? Why am I struggling with it? And I know I'm not alone in that. Because the thing that I think we often forget about vulnerability as a whole and encouraging people and guys in particular to be vulnerable is that it is so encouraged. Like, it is one of the easiest things to say, hey, just be open about it. But the thing is, we're not taught how to do so, at least not readily so. And that is like one of the first reasons why it's just so hard, or at least comes across as this kind of Herculean task of, can I actually be open? Can I actually be vulnerable? And for myself, that's something that I kind of recognized, was that even though I'm encouraged to do so, I'm not usually taught how to do so without seeking that information first, without seeking out the skill sets needed first, so that way I can actively express what I'm feeling and why I'm feeling it. So that's just reason one. We got three more, so let's jump into the rest of those too. Welcome back to Keeping Everything Simple podcast. I'm your host and fellow student, Michael Klukas, and in this show, we boil down complicated topics into simple and actionable tips. Continuing right into reason number two that I have at least seen as kind of like a big issue is the fact that the manosphere, which is, the kind of angry dude bro, I'm going to, say it openly, conservative versions online of like, all right, you have to be tough. You got to be a killer. You got to be angry. If you can't kill every other guy in this room, you're weak. You're a beta. You're soy. You're sick. And it just goes on and on and on. And oh my God, is it so stupid? Like, I'm a level with you real quick here. It is so stupid, because when we have a lack of positive male role models that can show us, here is how you actively deal with your emotions, here how you actively be vulnerable, then we're left trying to find someone to show us what it might look like to actively be open. But instead, we now have this constant torrent of just people that instead say, here's how you be a man, here's how you only get angry, here's how you only show rage and dominance, rather than saying, oh no, here is how you have an active conversation with your wife about how you are afraid about what an upcoming project at work is going to look like. Or here's how you show her and tell your friends that you're anxious about, some issue that you're struggling with. Because honestly, I cannot, say it enough that we need more positive role models as a whole, and especially for guys in general. It is not going to be found in the kind of toxic incel dump of the manosphere, either on Twitter, or Twitter X, whatever you call it, on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, whatever it is. You're not going to find it there. Instead, that's just continuing this cycle of, oh, I can only express anger, I can only be frustrated, I can only be this kind of domineering force. I can't be open, I can't be connected with other people. I have to be stoic and on my own, and that's just not the case. Now, the other thing is that, or the third reason that it's hard for men to be vulnerable, and why most of us feel that we can't, is that we process our emotions. However, I don't believe that we openly feel them. Let me explain. One of the things that I have realized for myself recently is that what I will do is there can be an issue that is distinctly painful, or there was an issue or an experience that I went through that I'm like, okay, I've processed it, I've thought about it, I've intellectualized it, and I've come to terms with it. That's fine. That's all well and good. But what then happens here is I kind of tie like a neat little bow on it, and then I mentally store it away in this little closet called emotions, and then I shut the door, and then I don't think about it again until something comes up, some similar experience comes up. And when that experience occurs, because trust me, it will happen, then I suddenly feel that neat little bow start to unravel. Whatever was in there, whatever I processed at that time and in that moment, begins to bubble up. It begins to kind of crack and leak out, because I may have processed it, but I never openly talked about it. I never openly felt what was going on. I just thought to myself, okay, A equals B, B equals C, C equals D, and okay, now I see where that connects. And so now from here, I have steps 1, 2, 3, 4, on and on and on. I was processing, I was intellectualizing, but I wasn't feeling what was happening. And that is, I think, a big recognition that has to be made on why it gets hard for guys to openly talk about what's happening, is because, even connected to part number 1 here about we're encouraged to, but we're not taught how do you not only process your feelings, but then communicate that, that thought process as a whole, communicate what you mentally are going through or how you mentally might be looking at a situation. And for myself, that has been such a struggle, especially in my marriage too, of trying to say, okay, no, I processed the issue. Like, we're good, right? But then my wife would say, no, we're not. Like, you processed it, you intellectualized it, but then you took all the emotion out of it. And for me then to think, oh, I did. I processed it so that way I could tuck it away, but I didn't process it and then say, okay, here's what's been going on and here's how I got here. Even just that in of itself, of talking about it, can help you actively express the feelings, but that doesn't come easy. And the fourth one that I am so guilty of is we're just stubborn. It feels, and I talked about this on a live stream, was that it feels awkward. It feels cringy. It feels, uncomfortable to actively sit in your feelings and say, oh yeah, this is what's going on. This is, again, something that I thought about, or something that happened a couple years ago that I still feel really sad about, or here's something that at work I'm struggling with and I get really frustrated and I'm losing my patience with it. Or, if you're in relationships, like, you can say, oh no, I felt like a little bit, gypped by this, or I feel like this is a bit unfair, or, any number of things that we could express. But if we get stubborn, and this is a broad generalization for guys in particular, we will be a lot more willing to dig our heels in and kind of stick our head in the sand and say, I'm going to plant my flag here and this is where it's going to stay. And again, this is something that I'm incredibly guilty of. It has caused any number of issues with my marriage and throughout the duration of our relationship. I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to be stubborn, but I don't realize when it's happening. And I don't realize when I am refusing to budge, which means I'm refusing to open up. I'm refusing to let my wife in. I'm refusing to let my friends in, my family in. And in turn, I'm refusing to be vulnerable. As a whole, we need to not just be encouraged to share our emotions. It's a skill set. We actively need to understand the skill sets of emotional communication, whether that's, the emotional intelligence, or just how we actively say, oh, this is what I'm feeling and how I'm feeling in the moment. We need to find more positive role models because, again, the manosphere, screw you guys for the most part. Like, you're continuing to drag down what could be healthy communication just for a quick buck. And some of you guys actually believe it wholeheartedly, and in of itself, that is concerning. So the manosphere sucks. Not good role models. And we need to understand what the difference between processing and intellectualizing a problem is versus actively feeling our way and expressing those feelings of a problem. And finally, understanding that when we dig our feet in and we get stubborn rather than trying to communicate, then as a whole, we're closing ourselves off from actively being able to relate to those in our lives, those that we want to hold dear, those that are important to us. And my encouragement to you guys is understand that being vulnerable for guys is a skill set. It's a skill set for everyone, but for guys in particular, it is a skill set that revolves around just how do you communicate and connect what's going on inside your head. It's not something that we should be ashamed about. It's not something that we should allow this kind of stubbornness to stop us in our tracks. it can again feel awkward and it's going to feel uncomfortable. That's just kind of a fact of the matter. Feelings themselves will get uncomfortable, and that's okay. It's part of it. So my encouragement is just that you guys look into the skill set of communicating openly, communicating not only the intellectualized process, but just what the emotional stops along the way were, because that in of itself is so much better than taking all the emotion out of it. And this is something that I want to talk about more, because as I struggle with it in my marriage, as I try to find the balance in it, as I try to improve my own skill set around it, I want guys in my age group. I want Gen Z. I want older guys and those who are coming after me in Gen Alpha. I want to have good emotional conversation. And this is also to hold myself accountable too, of I'm still working on this day in and day out and I suck at it. So this is just like, how can I be held accountable to the standards and to my goals and hopes of being a proper husband and in the future being a proper dad? So that's just, again, the 4 things that stop guys, I think, from being vulnerable, or some of the 4 things, because there's probably a lot other, but it's encouraged, not taught, a lack of positive male role models, the intellectualized experience rather than the emotional experience, and then when we get stubborn and choose to dig our heels in rather than opening up the conversation. But with that, keeping everything simple, have an amazing day, you amazing people. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you leave us a like, comment, and subscribe. Ring the notification bell so you know every time we upload a new episode. If you're listening to us on Spotify and other podcast app of choice, make sure that you leave us a 5-star rating and give us a follow. So that way you know every time I upload a new episode, and that really helps me out, and I greatly appreciate it. But have an amazing day. Go out there and do great things. I'll see y'all next time.